Hi, this is Dominic from CMAC, and in this video, I'm going to go over how to produce a podcast. So if you ever wondered, what is a podcast or where do you even start to make one, this is the video for you. So first off, what is a podcast? A podcast is just the evolution of radio broadcast, especially in today's era of modern technology with having internet connection basically in every household where you can just download and stream podcasts right in your own living room. There's a lot of podcasts these days. You can listen to them on Apple iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. There's also another variation of podcast called vodcast or vidcast. That's just a video-based podcast. That's a whole other thing that we'll get into later on, but that's another thing for you to consider. So the first thing you need to keep in mind when producing a podcast is you need to develop some sort of idea. Now, what do I mean by that? Basically, what is your show going to be about? The list can go on and on, but essentially you need to discover what it is that you like to talk about specifically. What are your hobbies? What are your passions? Like for me, I'm a nerd, so I like to play video games, sometimes read comic books, watch movies. So a podcast that I might produce, or I have produced actually, Swords and Lasers, that was my first podcast of over a year ago. That was a pop culture based one. Now I have a new one with a friend called Digital Century Podcast. The overall, they're both pop culture based shows, and we'll talk about movies, video games, some comic books here and there. And the list can just go on and on with just that alone. But if you like to listen to music, or you like to talk about music with friends, maybe how to learn how to play an instrument, the different types of instruments there are, or maybe sports, NFL, baseball, basketball, those are big things that one can talk about. So really it's up to you, but make sure it's something that you love to talk about, something that you love to do, because otherwise you're not going to have fun with it. And if you don't have fun with it, then that's just going to show in your podcast. So definitely pick something that interests you and then go from there. The next thing you need to decide is whether or not you want to have an audio-based podcast or video. Each one has its own set of challenges, pros and cons. There's no right or wrong answer, really. It's just up to you. I guess another way you can think about it is, how much of a workload do you want to put on yourself when you want to produce a podcast? So like audio, all you're worrying about is literally just the audio recording of the show. And if you're going to do video, that's going to add a whole nother layer of complexity. What kind of camera am I going to use? What am I going to do for lights, sound, a location even? Well, location can go for both, but it's just another list of things for you to think about. So let's think about audio real quick. So if you're just going to worry about audio, you could, really record with just your cell phone. There's built-in apps in the cell phone, like the voice memo or the voice recorder app that you can install onto your phone. And then there you go. For video, as I mentioned, there's going to add a little bit more complexity to that, but your one and all tool can be your cell phone. These days, cell phones have pretty good video cameras. They have a front and rear camera. The main thing you're going to need to worry about is just placement. Make sure it's, propped up correctly in front of you, something like a textbook, so that way it doesn't fall backward or it doesn't, fall forward. And then it has its own built-in audio recorder. There you go. You got your video and your audio are recorded. Some other things you're going to need to worry about is lighting. If you're recording from home, you can use, for example, I have a balcony right off to the side of me, and I just make sure the blinds are open. You can use a table lamp that you have in your room, turn that on. That way, you have your face lit up properly. Those are some simple options that you can do right off the bat. And another thing with lighting, you could be really creative with it. You can have your backlight to hit you from behind, put some colored gels, can help set the mood. What I did with Swords and Lasers was I had set up in the CMAC studio, basically kind of like these two towers with these parkan lights, and I just changed the light to them. Another thing for you to consider after you decided, okay, is it going to be an audio or video based show, is to decide the structure of your show. What I mean by that is, your beginning, your middle, and your end. The intro can be something as simple as, hi, my name is Dominic Zamora, or you want to get a little bit more fancy, you can do something like an animation, whether it's pre-made or you make it yourself, some sort of animated logo with some sound effects. That way you introduce the show, who you are, to your viewers. The next thing is the main meat of your show, the structure. What are you going to talk about? Do you want to have it structured where it's pre-written? You have a basic outline, okay, and today's show I'm going to talk about A, B, C, and D. Or do you want it more free-flowing? There's plenty of podcasts out there where it's just more free form. Maybe the one, two, or other hosts, they're gonna just kind of go on a tangent. Basically, just let the conversation flow naturally to the next thing. You can talk about, how's the weather like today in Fresno. Your guest might say something like, yeah, traffic was terrible, blah, 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 blah. And that just goes down the rabbit hole of the next thing. Some people like that form. There's nothing wrong with either one. Just what feels more natural to you. What do you enjoy more? It's just up to you and your creative decision. And then lastly, the outro. So kind of like it's just the reverse of the intro. Instead of saying, hi, my name is so-and-so, it will be, thanks for tuning in on today's show. We'll see you next time. You can say that, call it a day. Or if you're planning on producing more, you want to build up your audience, I would say definitely add in your social media tags. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever you have access to for your podcast, and then go from there. That way people know when to come back or where to go back to find more of your content. If you want to see some examples of some podcasts, different levels of complexity, you can watch Digital Century Podcast. When we first started that show, it was just in the podcast studio on the 3rd floor of CMAC, back even before it even had the sound pads, at least at first. It was just in the room with one camera, then we gradually went into multiple cameras in that same room, and then we transitioned eventually into the studio where we actually built a set with more lights, more background stuff, multi-camera shots. So you can see the transition over time of how complicated that set was. For CMAC's playback services, you're going to need to have a video component to it. It doesn't mean that you need to film a straight-on video with, for sure, like your camera on your phone or another video camera. You can simply put together an episode with just a JPEG logo from start to finish. We've had plenty of members who've done that in the past, where they have a 30 or maybe an hour-long show, and from start to finish is just a JPEG logo. Just the one shot for 30 minutes. And then that's fine, we'll accept that. So these are all the different things you need to consider when producing a podcast. First, what kind of idea of a show do you want? What's the theme of it? How are you gonna record it? Is it just audio or video? And then, kind of goes from there. So I know that's a lot of information, and this is not meant to dissuade you from, producing a podcast by any means. No, this is just to give you different options to consider. There's different levels of a podcast to produce, and it's all up to you and your creative vision on what you want. If you want it to be as simple as possible, then by all means go with the JPEG logo for just the audio version of it for our playback. And then if you want to go from there, start building up your experience over time, and they get more complicated. So please don't get discouraged. You're probably feeling like, man, how am I going to do this? What if my show is bad? What if my lighting's terrible? The audio's terrible? Don't worry. Take a breath. You don't have to be great to start. You just need to start to be great at it. You just got to start somewhere and just have fun with it. Just remember, have fun with the show and then go from there. So that does it for this intro video on podcasting. There'll be other videos following on different aspects of podcasting and other topics, so stay tuned for those. You can watch these videos on our social media platforms at CMAC TV, which include Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, as well as our YouTube and CMAC channel. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys really learned a lot from this. And then remember, guys, just have fun with your podcast. And stay tuned for more video tutorials.